going to get the meeting going here.
You look mighty comfortable, Councillor Harris.
Yeah, that's somewhat. I'm kicked out of my regular spots. I'm trying to make it work.
Okay, you may go ahead.
Are we ready? Okay. Well, thank you for everybody for coming, and I'll call this meeting of the Heritageberry Committee to order. And welcome to everyone. We have the very first item on our agenda has to do with the committee budget. And I can tell you that budget deliberations are presently underway at council. I have been told that the portion of our budget is unchanged for the Heritageberry Committee. So we were allotted $23,000 last year, and we're expecting to get the same this year. That will come through the wash at some point. Tammy, you wanted to say something?
The presentation from Stephanie and Amanda was first.
Oh, I just skipped right over that. Sorry. We'll
Sorry
get
about
back
that.
to the budget then after the presentation. You're right. Pardon me. Stephanie is here to give us a presentation on the engine 1531. So Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Councillor Rietma, and thank you for the opportunity to present. I will share my screen momentarily. So tonight's presentation comes from the direction from the staff report that we presented to General Committee that referred this matter back to staff to look at some of the cost benefit related to relocating the engine back to Allendale Station or the vicinity, as well as to consult with Heritageberry. So tonight, I know you've got the presentation yesterday. I know it was pretty text heavy, but I will walk you through tonight and a lot to sort through and some discussion pieces for us to take back. And I know this isn't an easy issue, so I'm very open to having that conversation and dialogue. And with that, I am going to share my screen. And all of you should be looking at that. And if I go to my slideshow and play from the beginning, change my display. You'd think it would just do all of this intuitively. Are you seeing a presenter view or are you seeing the actual presentation?
I'm seeing
We
what
have
you should
the
be seeing.
presentation view, but we're not seeing the, we're seeing your notes is what we're seeing.
Ah, you don't want to see that. Let's try this again. All right, is this good now?
That's better.
Oh, this is the worst. Okay, here we go. I look forward to being back in human, and I don't know, hopefully technology flows. So again, thank you. I do have Amanda who's joining us from my team. She is our cultural development officer and has been working through this alongside. And again, so today we want to go through the matter that was directed by council with motion 21G218, and it really directed staff again to chat with Heritageberry regarding the restoration and donation of the historic train, to look at some of that early cost benefit for locating engine 1531 at Allendale, and looking at South Shore versus the County of Simcoe. So we've done some of that work. I believe you are familiar with a good volume of the history, so I won't spend a ton of time there. But in 2010, the engine was moved from Barrie's waterfronts to the Simcoe County Museum on a temporary loan. The cost at that time to do the track and do some of the hazardous material was $149,000. The remaining restoration was not completed and remains incomplete to this date. The report back that we provided this year was in relation to council motion in 2017 that did direct staff to explore negotiating with the County of Simcoe to look at the potential donation of the train. The Simcoe County Museum has confirmed that they do have an interest in receiving the engine as a donation in order to ensure its long-term preservation and to continue to build on its collection, which is focused on the counties broadly, so includes the city as well as the county, the rich history and transportation, and of course, including the role of Allendale Station in that. Again, it has been there since 2010. The Simcoe County Museum has been doing some minor work and base maintenance, but again, that core restoration continues to be outstanding. We asked, as part of our report back in early 2021 of this year, we did get an updated quote from the museum to look at the engine, the tender, and the caboose. And that estimate was about $319,000. That included a $29,000 contingency. But what it did not include is the project manager or the majority of the labor, as the county museum staff and volunteers would had agreed to take on some of that process as part of that restoration. We do have a long history with the museum, and it's estimated that about 60% of their 35 to 45,000 annual visitors are residents of Barrie, and they do see 8,000 visitors through their site annually for educational purposes. There are many exhibits within the museum, and many are connected to the City of Barrie, including the City of Barrie's Main Street exhibit. Right now, the engine currently fits with the museum's theme of Barrie and Simcoe County in the early 20th century, which covered the periods of late 1800s to early 1900s. And again, they continue to provide some of that preventative care in absence of that full restoration being completed. We have had several conversations with the Simcoe County Museum staff. Of course, their business model has been evolving over time, and they are currently managing several priorities, and they have some opportunities related to their strategic planning. For them to look at a project of the magnitude that Engine 1531 would be, because it would be a 3-year restoration, it does present several challenges for them to continue to recommend supporting it as a temporary exhibit. If it is to be temporary, if it were to remain temporarily at the Simcoe County Museum, they wouldn't have, if the intent is to restore it, but to then move it, the museum would not have the project management or labor resources to provide the in-kind components that they had put in that original quote to support that 3-year restoration program. So there would be additional responsibility to the city for the additional costs of labor and project management to complete the restoration. Further to that, the museum would be in a tough place to be able to support the restoration being completed by an independent organization at the museum site. Just several project requirements that they have and risk management. So they would request that the engine would be removed from the site for restoration to be completed. And of course, that would be at the cost of the city. All of the direction is subject to support from County Council, but this is the position of the museum at this time. So 2 of the options that we looked at was restoring the engine 1531 and return it to Allendale or nearby to South Shore. You could return it to Allendale when the site is ready. We would need to transport or move the engine from the museum in 2022 for a restoration, and then move it again to its permanent location if it were to be at Allendale and South Shore. The city would need to support an RFQ project and a restoration, project management, and any place that it gets located would require investigation on soil preparation, concrete pad permits, and we would want to, of course, protect, given that the piece is restored from that public access piece. Currently, there's no resourcing planned for that. There isn't a current timeline then associated in absence of resources, and a cursory budget looking again at some of the historic costs that have been done throughout the iteration of this process, and moving the engine alone is close to $100,000 ask from historically. You're likely looking at a 600,000 plus, and that would be restoration, project management, movement, relocation. And again, that is preliminary, but that's based on some of the historic figures that have been provided, and in consultation with some of our facilities. To donate the engine to Simcoe County, the engine would remain at the museum. This museum has established a restoration work program and budget phased over 3 years. We did talk about where that project management and labor restoration work would be in kind. The museum is secure, and they do currently provide some holistic education experience for visitors. Some of the things that we've explored and we identified in the staff report are really opportunities to create, could we then create some experiences when Allendale Station should be able to be developed that would really tie the two sites, and could you create a bigger experience between the two places? The estimated budget, and again, we just focused on the restoration component, would be $319,000, as the county couldn't accept the piece for donation unless it was restored and in a manner that they could receive it. Looking at the Allendale Station or South Shore Park, which is one of the other directions, we did have a brief consultation, early consultation with Parks planning staff. They are in process of undertaking an update to the waterfront master plan. So the update would address several areas around the waterfront, including Military Heritage Park, South Shore Park, which are in the vicinity of Allendale Station. As again, some very precursor comments. South Shore Park is currently utilized to support Kempen Fest and some other events. And so the presence of the engine there would occupy a significant portion of that green space and impact the utilization of South Shore Park as an open space in that area. And again, we don't have clearance for the development of Allendale Station, and another component to consider in looking at what happens with Allendale in the future is really to look at the complete history of the site, including our Indigenous peoples who first occupied the land. So I think all of that would have to be as part of any process before placing any artifacts on the site. We also looked, and I think a great point was made around the heritage tourism, and I know that we've got a presentation coming to you next month sort of talking about a little bit about our tourism master plan, and I know this is something that this group has organized. So we did do a brief chat with our colleagues in tourism, and to look at that heritage tourism piece, it would need to be a little bit more holistic. So how do you tie in additional products, guided tours that could identify or connect with Barrie's rail history? Could you look at other attractions that would be related to Engine 1531, really in order to recognize that area as a destination or to see or learn? And some additional considerations for investing in some of that product development would need to provide a bit of that tourism cluster in order for that space or to really derive the tourism benefit. And again, at this point, we do not have a wholesome heritage tourism strategy for the locomotive or the waterfront. We are in a place as a staff where we're challenged to support a business case for the additional expenses associated with retaining Engine 1531. And that is in context with looking at all of the things that the city is engaged in and required to provide from a service. And just looking at some of, again, moving costs, temporary, if we need to temporarily relocate it, which is very likely, the costing with soil, concrete slab, just all of the pieces make it a little bit from our lens quite prohibitive. We have to, again, taken another cursory look at granting programs. We haven't identified anything of a significant funding source that could support. So staff at this point do retain the position that based upon the current status of Allendale Station, the fiscal costs, and the ability for the museum to provide some of that fulsome educational experience, We do still maintain the recommendation that it be donated to the Simcoe County Museum. But I think the greater opportunity that we see in considering how do you look at the heritage of Allendale and Allendale Station and the role of rail. How could you look at some of, could you lever? There are some potential tourism dollars out there, or there are some opportunities to perhaps redirect a small proportion of that additional budget that we identified that would need to be used to relocate the engine. Could we cultivate something on a more regional tourism experience that would elevate opportunities at Allendale within in Barrie, but also make that connected piece to the county museum and really draw sort of an enriched experience. And when we think of the biking trails, when we think of some of those other pieces, there may be something to that. And again, I think there's more work to be done to explore. I think there are opportunities to recognize as part of the site, but that is where we sit at this present moment. And so some of the things that we need to bring back as part of any follow-up to council is obviously feedback from the committee on where staff where our analysis and position sits. And I wanted to percolate this as part of the conversation and whether we want to come back and do this, but what options could there be for recognizing or incorporating Barrie's rail history at Allendale Station beyond Engine 1531? And again, that ties a little bit further back to the heritage tourism piece, and again, looking at other ways creatively to recognize, and again, could we build a richer experience? So with that, I think I'll stop sharing. I'm happy to share my screen again if there are particular slides you'd like me to revisit. And I will pass the baton back to the chair.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. All right, are there any questions on this presentation? Let's start with questions and then we'll go to some discussion. Nobody? All right. Councillor Harris.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks, staff, for all the work. You turned this around really quickly, so I appreciate it greatly. Just curious, so with the recommendation that would go to council, it would be at present would be for investing the $319,000, which is not insignificant, in preserving this resource, which is no insignificant and small task to get through council anyway. $319,000, just to put that on the table. Is there any potential, if the recommendation was, I lost my question, but if we said, listen, or council said, listen, don't restore this thing, what would happen to the train? Like, would we still be on the hook for getting it off the property and all that stuff still exists? There's still going to be a cost, right?
We still have commitment. We still own the asset and the train itself. I know that from the county's perspective, and they've been sitting with this unrestored piece, and it is outside. So the more it's exposed to the elements, the more its condition deteriorates, which again adds to the cost to restore it. But also, in terms of the museum and what they're trying to do and preserve history, it really is a challenge for them to maintain it, and they are not in a position to complete the works. So again, in absence of county direction, the museum's opinion at this point would be that they would likely look for us to remove it from the site until it was in a appropriate condition, and or whether we donate it or whether it gets permanently relocated, and there would be a cost associated with that.
And it's a big cost to move those things. So it's not like this, we're getting out of this with zero cost. There's going to be a big cost at some place. So to do nothing, there's still going to be a big cost, right? Okay.
Yeah, we haven't pursued, and that's a fair point, Councillor Harris. We haven't pursued disposition in any way from a sale or any of those types of things. So I wouldn't have any sense of what that is. But I can say, and Amanda, I'll get you to head nod or jump in. I think when we were looking at some of the historical moving costs, it was about $100,000 to move it. And we then would need to find a place to store it. You know, we do still own a rail asset, however, that is used for freight movement. So, you know, as a long-term solution, that really isn't there. And again, you're still working within having an asset that's deteriorating both in value and history. And I don't think that is where the group would like to go, but that's
Okay,
my
thanks. I'm sure
observation.
you have a question, so thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay. Any other questions? Shelley?
Thank you, Councillor Ripa. So thanks, Stephanie, again for the presentation. And I guess just so that I'm clear, kind of two questions. One was following up with Councillor Harris. Like, what is the state of the train? Like, I mean, do we have a window of a year or two, or like what happens? Does it just, it's not going to just disintegrate and fall apart? I mean, is it just going to rust out, or like what is, you know, what's that? And the second was with regards to just an understanding of, even if it was given to the Simcoe County Museum, where are they going to get the $300,000? I just wasn't clear on that. So sorry, two questions.
No, those are great, and thank you very much. I in terms of the lifespan, if we continue to do nothing, I don't have clarity on that. So I am happy to take that back, and we would probably need some expertise from our friends at the museum on that. I can say that in terms of a donation, the county museum would not accept a piece, and that is a standard practice, I think, across all museums, that you to not accept a donation unless it is in a donatable state. And at this point, it is not in a state where they can maintain and preserve it. So they wouldn't accept it unless the restoration work was complete, and then the ownership would transfer over to them, and they would take on all of the ongoing maintenance and things of that nature. And in the staff report, they identified that there would be repainting and regular touch-ups and things like that that would be required over the life of the piece.
So if I could jump in just to kind of clarify that. So therefore, the idea is that somewhere the city, somebody has to come up with $300,000 to restore this so that the Simcoe County Museum will even keep it. Okay.
That is correct. So our recommendation in that original report was we asked council to, and realistically for the county museum, they thought it would be a 3-year project to get the work completed.
Okay.
So we have requested that we complete the restoration works, have that included in our capital budget. And that over, you know, they would invoice us as they go through. And then it would be, after that time frame, it would be in a donatable place, and that ownership would be facilitated. But it would, the capital would have to be at this point at our end.
Last point on that, then, you know, even with Councillor Harris, if it does go back to council, I would guess that you would have to have plan A. Plan B would be, we don't do anything with it, and therefore you still have, it's going to disintegrate or whatever, and we still have to remove it, so that I guess when it does go to council, they understand the 300,000 versus if we don't do anything, it's still going to, you know, to Councillor Harris's point, it's still going to cost us $100,000+ just to move the train, and where to move it to, some field where it just falls apart or whatever, you know. I guess would be good to have options. So so I leave that with you, and I know Kathy has a question.
Okay.
Thank
Kathy.
you.
Oh, trying to figure out how to unmute myself. Thank you, Stephanie, for the presentation. That was great. I've certainly been following along, you know, for some time, and we've had conversation about this, and, you know, really the importance of, and how certainly the community is supportive of moving it. However, there are dollars and cents behind all of this, of course. The 319,000, potentially, if a decision was made to bring it back, would that 319,000 potentially come back to us? So we wouldn't be donate. So just bear with me if I can figure this out. So if we don't donate it, and the decision is made that it does come back, that $319,000 that is being allocated over a 3-year term potentially would be $319,000 toward whatever we do at Allendale. If council approved that budget, either way.
So correct, the 319,000 has not been approved to be put into any capital budget at this point.
Right.
So if there was a decision made to not donate the engine to the Simcoe County Museum, there would need to be a new estimate done on restoration by a private independent firm, because the museum could not accommodate those, could not facilitate the restoration for us. So we would need to go out and have an independent. It would need to be project managed internally. So yeah, I would say that 319,000 kind of disappears from any map, because you're really then starting from scratch on what that restoration program would look like, plus the movement, plus, you know, what's needed to facilitate it at a final landing spot.
Okay, and I think, thank you for that. And I think if I got this correct, the project management and labor costs at the museum have not been included in that $319,000. Now, I think if I understand, some of that work would be labor in kind. I think that's what you call it. Or do we have any idea what the project management and or labor might be? Like, is that another $100,000 realistically?
Very early and very preliminary, again, without validating. We haven't done that validation process, but what has been estimated sits around that $150,000 mark, if I recall correctly. And Amanda, is that when we had in all our follow-up emails, I'm trying to think all the back and forth. I know it was touched on briefly, but it is an unvalidated estimate, but it is a sense of where we think we would land.
And thank you for that. And if we were to go out to, at this point, if we were simply to go out to request for information as opposed to a request for quote, or maybe one or the other, you know, do we have the staff resources to do that? And is there a cost associated with that? To actually get sort of a better understanding of the project management, the labor, the timeline, the plans, from an outside source, so that we have more than one. We have more than one option. So we're looking at the museum, and then what is option B or option C?
Maybe I can just jump in here for a minute. I think that Stephanie's report says 600,000, but let's just take a bit of a look at all of that. The first thing is that if we're going to keep the ownership and we're going to do something with it as a city, the first thing we have to do is we move it off-site, 100,000. Then we have to do the restoration. Give yourself a bit of room. It's not 300, it's going to be 500 or 600. So let's say it's 500,000 to restore it. We're at 600. Then we need to move it to wherever we're going to permanently put it, another 100,000, 700,000. Then we need to create a context for it, like a building around it, a pad for it, whatever that costs. So give yourself $200,000 for that. So all of a sudden we're sitting at 800,000, 900,000. We're getting close to $1 million. So that's one of the choices that we have, is to spend, pick a number, but $800,000 and keep the train. Or if we're going to give it away to the Simcoe County Museum, it's at the moment going to cost us $319,000. I suppose the other alternative is that we just say, you know what, let's just call a scrap dealer and see how much he'll give us for it. And, you know, we might get, who knows what scrap metal is worth these days, but we'd probably get a bit of money for it, maybe $10,000 or $15,000. So those are, I think, the three options. Fortunately for us, as a Heritageberry Committee, we don't have to worry about the money. The council and what staff is asking for is a recommendation from us. I think it's really good to keep in the background what the financial consequences are. But, you know, I think we're tasked with giving historical advice. Keep in mind that if council is looking at the difference between 300,000 and 800,000, the council is going to make that final decision, and they're fully entitled to take a good hard look at the dollars. So they're, you know, like, those are the choices that are before us. And I think what we need to do is we need to make a recommendation to general committee and eventually council on where we think, from a historical perspective, we ought to go. Craig.
Well, I've visited the engine. I'm sure some other people have as well. And my opinion is number one is it has to be fixed, and the sooner the better. Otherwise, it will be a scrapyard piece. And so I think as a historical artifact that obviously Barrie was given, and it's part of our history. But the biggest thing is, for me, is historically it has to survive as best it can. So my recommendation from my point of view is if we can, the number one thing is to preserve it and get it fixed. So that's my point.
All right. The other, Kaylee.
I think my recommendation would be maybe to, as much as everybody in Allendale wants to at Allendale, if it's between Allendale or at the museum, I would say the museum, because you're going to get more educational value out of it than it's sitting at the waterfront. And they may even be able to fix it up like other museums where kids can actually go in it as part of their experience rather than having to stand behind the fence. It might also be better protected at the museum than down at the waterfront as well. But I think it'd be more educational for the public than at the museum than sitting in Allendale, as much as everybody would like to just see it back by the train station.
All right, thanks, Kelly. David.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your presentation, especially clearing up who was going to pay for the restoration. I didn't quite understand that even remaining there and donated, the city will be participating in this $300 and some thousand restoration. That only, and my only concern would be then, what about the future? And this has come up fairly suddenly, that we're obviously going to be partners in this to some extent, and to have put in that much money and it remaining there, is there any way to protect what future councils and future committees might want to do? There's no question about its placement on the waterfront and how that could, you know, contribute to it. I mean, and I realize the details can be difficult, but no question there about what a train has to do with the Allendale station. And so nevertheless, if there was anything that could be done for the future, possible future acquisition, and I know the museum obviously wouldn't want to lose it, but here's an investment which seems to make us very much partners, both parties. That's mainly a comment. Thank you.
I think that the Simcoe County Museum does not see it as a partnership. They see it as a donation, and they will become the owner of the engine. But of course, you're always welcome to go visit it. That would be the way that it would work. All right, any more discussion? Sarah.
Yes, thank you. I was just wanted to say I do agree that perhaps the museum would be a better option. Like, I know that it would be really nice at the waterfront, but one, the cost seems to be significantly different. And the fact that we would really have to put a fence around it and people would not be able to get close to it, where at the museum you do have more educational options for people to maybe see it. And there could be a bit more of an exhibit with the whole detail of it. Given that, is it something that we could say, okay, if we donate it to the museum, would they be willing to assist us in creating a little mini exhibit at Allendale where you could have pictures of it restored and maybe in its original form, anything like that, where we could create a collaborative experience where we say, here's a bit of the history here. If you really want to see the whole thing, go and see it where it's protected in the museum.
Yeah. I certainly think that is very possible. I think that's a great suggestion, and I think it probably would work out really well. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess we moved from the questions for Ms. Schlichter to the discussion, which is great. So, but I think she's interested, so she's staying, which is wonderful. I think, David, you raised a really important point, and I, if I understand correctly, and others may be able to correct my assumption, that having the train or any artifact stay at the museum assures a certain level of care and maintenance so that it maintains its restored function. So I think that's a really important issue, and I think that was in the original report. If it came back to Barrie, there's ongoing costs to keep it up, right? And even the painting and stuff is actually quite expensive. So that's a really great point, Dave. So if all that money is spent to get this train to a really wonderful state, it will be maintained at a museum to museum standards, which I think is really wonderful. And so was it Kaylee who just said, or is it Sarah? I can't remember. Sorry. That what a wonderful idea to talk if it went this way and it was at the museum, but to create that synergy between the county and the pictures of the restoration, how it got to where it is today and the history of it could be embedded at Allendale Station. I think one of the other really important things that staff included in the report was, we have our certain attachment to our heritage here, which is settler kind of colonization, built form and items, but we're now talking about the original heritage of that site is Indigenous. So I think we need to be respectful of what we will be doing with regards to that and leaving room as appropriate for the Indigenous recognition that will be coming hopefully as that site gets opened up and we respect what was originally there, because it wasn't a train station. It was Indigenous community. So I think so thanks to staff for recognizing that really important difference in that site from what we often refer to it as.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Kathy.
Is there any opportunity at any point to engage the public on this?
Well, I don't know what you have in mind, but of course we can always do that. But I think the question is in front of us in terms of what is our recommendation.
Well, I think my question is really in relation to, from the time it moved, people, and this is a part of the history as well, from the time that it moved from the lakeshore to the museum, people of this city were always under the impression that it was going to come back. So, is there any opportunity for engagement? Because one of the other things we had talked about is the potential for fundraising as well. And it's something that perhaps the community could get behind, but maybe not. So, at no point along the way have we actually had community engagement by way of, just asking, simple survey questions as to whether, they would like to continue to see it out at the Simcoe County Museum, or they behind it coming to whether it's South Shore or the station for the heritage value of it. And would they be, or would they consider donating, or, any number of things. I mean, we've never engaged the public in any way.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Just a question.
Yeah. Any comments on that? Sarah?
Yeah, I just on that, I think that any engagement with the public, as much as people would like to see it here, I think as part of that, an upfront statement would have to be the cost of it, because taxpayers are going to have to pay for it regardless. And just asking them heritage wise, like we all feel the heritage value is supremely important, but as a taxpayer, probably not going to consider $1 million bill compared to 300, 400,000 would be slightly different. So, if we do want to ask them, that's a thing, but I think that we would also sort of have to be responsible and tell them upfront about what the cost would be.
Okay. Any other, Kathy, is your hand up, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
And certainly that would be, it would have to be a fulsome survey, Sarah, for sure, so that people actually understood what was going on and what, what the costs associated with it would be. But until we actually know the fulsome costs of, keeping it there with the project management and the labor and everything that goes with it, versus having it at Allendale with all of those costs, and to, sort of just put your finger up and say, well, it's going to be 800,000 or $1 million. I'd like to see, personally, I'd like to see the cost associated with if you go out to an RFQ or an RFP, so that we actually have something to look at. And so here's the cost, here's, it's like when you go out to tender for anything else, you don't just get one cost. You have 2 or 3 items to pick from, and you sort of weigh them against each other. And I'm not sure that we have that.
Okay. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, fair points, Kathy. I guess the question I'm thinking, this is fairly specialized work, so you wouldn't have a lot of people who do this. Secondly, as I understand, and Ms. Selector, if you can correct me, is that the $319,000 from the county is a value number because it includes in-kind and volunteer work. So the expectation would be that we are getting a value number at 319, which includes a contingency of 29. So, we have fairly decent numbers given the project that we're asking for estimates on. Is that fair?
So actually, thank you, Councillor Harris. There is in the staff report, we did include the report back from the county who provided the estimate. And yes, they would oversee all the project management. They would use both, or they would leverage their staff expertise as well as their volunteer community. So there is some value built into that, which again, they have identified for us as something we need to consider.
Maybe one quick follow-up. I mean, for those who are car lovers, there's different grades of restoration of vehicles. There's the full frame off Chip Fuchs magical restoration. Then there's the backyard mechanic get it on the road. Is this restoration, museum level is obviously, the highest level of restoration. And I don't know that we'd be interested in anything less than that, correct? Is that fair to say?
I'm looking at Amanda only because I'm going. Yeah, I mean, my assumption is, and I didn't specifically ask that question, although I'm sure it's in the attachment, that it is of a grade and a quality that is preservable and preserves the history and is of a standard that it could be donated. So I can confirm if there's, again, a set of standards in there. But Amanda, do you want to jump in if?
Yeah, absolutely. The estimate that the museum provided was quite detailed, and it did sort of state that that's kind of the core. That's what needs to be done in order for them to continue to exhibit it. I think should the city choose to keep it and undertake the project ourselves, then there's probably like things that could be done more piecemeal. But my understanding is that it is at a state where it needs to be done. And once you start taking it apart, if you don't have the plans to put it all back together, it's probably not going to go back together. So I think that's something that needs to be considered, as well as the amount of time it's been sitting.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I mean, the comparison to a car restoration is a good one. I think sometimes my experience is that it's just an invitation to spend money. All right. Any other comments? That seeing none. I think we probably should have a motion or a recommendation to general committee. That way we know where the committee stands, and I think it would be helpful for council to know what the recommendation would be from this committee. So I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I did see kind of a general consensus that we support the staff recommendation to move the train to the county museum. Did I capture things reasonably well there? I see some nods. Shelley?
I was just going to add, I really like Sarah's point that maybe if we are going to put that motion forward, that we add that we would work collaboratively with the museum to ensure that photographs or some kind of an exhibit of sorts eventually ends up with their help of being able to take photographs or be able to photograph the restoration or something along that lines. Because I think that's important to capture that, or to ensure that we eventually have their support to include that in the train station.
All right. Yes, I think that's a great addition. Craig, you're on mute.
One thing that I was thinking about that, you know, how they're thinking of building the new bus station, and one of the things we said was perhaps some murals in there. That might be something that might go in there rather than a stand-up plaque. I'm just thinking that, you know, that could be where they could maybe cite that idea as well. Just throwing it out there. So.
Yeah, I think that there are probably some really creative minds out there that could figure out how to really do that well. Tammy, can you craft a motion that sort of captures the suggestion that we move it to the county museum, and that we have some sort of engagement with the museum, that we could get some sort of experiential thing back here at the city for both historic and for tourism purposes. I didn't write the motion out, but I'm going to leave that to you to craft. Is that?
Yeah, I just kind of put something together. I don't know. I've just kind of get the synopsis, and then I can wordsmith it later.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's fine. Councillor Harris, did you have something that you wanted to mention, or was you just waving your hand? Okay. All right. All right. So we have the gist of what the motion is.
I think I have it. Do you want me to just kind of read what I have?
Oh, I think people understand where.
So you basically want a historical exhibit in the Allendale Station vicinity of the Allendale Station, or a suitable location. Is that regarding the engine?
That kind of thing.
1531 or something like
Okay.
that. Is that kind of right?
All right. So you've got the gist of the motion. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Kathy. All right. That carries. Thank you very much. And thank you, Stephanie and Amanda. Appreciate your hard work on that. And You're welcome to stay for the rest of the committee, but you may have other things you may want to do as well. So we won't be offended if you leave.
Thank you for the opportunity. We're going to be back next month, so we do not want to overstay our welcome. Thank you. I know this is hard. I know my mom was telling me she's got a picture of me yay big way back when it was located down by the waterfront. So I know there's lots of attachment to the train, and appreciate your support. So have a wonderful night, everybody.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, everybody. We'll
Thanks,
see you next
Amanda.
month.
All
Take
right.
care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. All right. And now the next item is on the budget that I started on earlier on. And I guess the news is that last year we had a budget of $23,600. And this year, the expectation is that we will have that same number. It's a sort of a global number, and we need to then discuss how we split it up, or how we expect to split it up for the next year. I have to say that the budget has not been approved by council, so all of this is a bit on the tentative side. But I think what we need in order to really nail this down for next year is how many plaques do we still need for designated buildings? How many plaques do we still need for listed buildings? And how many street signs do we still need? Those will be the big items. I'm wondering if Thomas or Tammy, if one of you can give us the answer to those. And of course, we don't need that this night, but if we get that answer even for next meeting, that would give us an early start on how we actually carve up that fantastic sum that we get to spend every year.
Okay, so you want a kind of an idea how many street signs, how many plaques for designated listed buildings you need, right? For next year, for 2020.
Yeah, I think those are going to be the big items.
Big items, okay. For next meeting, okay.
And then there's a bunch of other things, but those are all smaller items. Any Shelley, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Councillor Rip. I was just curious, is with being succinct, is there a place that I haven't seen yet, just kind of itemizing where we have spent money this year, just so that we can kind of look at, that was a good question that you asked as far as the plaques, but where else did we spend the money? And because I know that we'd also talked about some vinyl wraps in various places. We've talked about murals, we've talked about all kinds of things. So I guess it's just, I don't know what we did really last year, coming in a little bit late, and then we need to talk about maybe what the priorities are and what would the wish list, what would we like to do? And then we will have to saw it off to say, okay, because I know we'd also included or talked about a tent, and some tablecloths because of open air Dunlop and things like that. So I think if we really thought about it, there's quite a laundry list of a wish list that we should probably, put out to the committee at some point and see which one of those we want to prioritize.
Yep, for sure. I'm just making a note here. The other sort of bigger piece that we have spent money on is a consultant for 2 buildings to do the background historic work. So that, I think the number was $2,500 per building, so $5,000. So we'll need to carry some of that in our budget to get that done, hopefully for a couple more buildings next year. So yeah.
Can Tammy provide that, or just a kind of a list of this is what we've spent so far, just so that I guess for newbies like me, I kind of understand, oh, okay, well, we got to include some money for that next year. We have a fruitful discussion.
Yeah, I think that tonight I just wanted to highlight it, and then I think next meeting we'll put that on the agenda, and then we can have a discussion about it, because I'm not really I don't have all the information to be able to have a useful discussion, so we might as well do it as efficiently as possible. Thomas.
Thank you, Councillor. I was just going to say that as well. We can certainly get you some numbers. We haven't spent as much money as we thought we would have spent by now, just because the Plaques program has been kicking around for a little while, and the street sign program has not been fully implemented. But once the one thing would get spent, the other one gets spent very shortly after. So I still anticipate that we'll be making those expenditures this year to make sure we use our money for this year as well. So as of right now, it'll probably show that we haven't spent a whole lot, but probably by next meeting, it'll show there will be a few big subtractions. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's where we're headed. And Tammy, we'll put this on the agenda for next month, so that we can have a wholesome discussion on it and get ourselves set up for 2022. All right. Any other comment on the budget? Okay. Heritageberry Awards. Kathy. You're on mute, Kathy.
I did send a note tonight about a remembrance wreath. And I think we had put in, in the budget last year. I think we did budget. We talked about getting a wreath for the cenotaph, which of course isn't happening this year because they're not having a public event at the cenotaph. But what I was wondering is if we could do a donation to the Poppy Fund in lieu of the wreath, because we did budget something.
I was just looking at our budget from last year, and there's nothing on it for the remembrance. So
I thought we did, Craig. Did we not talk about this last year?
There's nothing on my page.
Okay.
I think
Craig?
I think we discussed last year, we were saying, you know, did we want to be part of the Remembrance Day ceremony?
Okay.
But then COVID happened and we didn't do it last year. And then I don't think really we've sort of said it. So I don't think we said we're going to spend this on the wreath. I think we said we were going to try to get involved, and then COVID happened. So that's what I remember.
Okay.
Shelley?
The only thing I was going to mention that I know we've tossed around is also the idea, just for the budget, to kind of, I guess there's this included on the laundry list of a wish list, was that we were thinking of maybe getting some outside design work or whatever for a logo, if we wanted to explore that before we started to finalize the logo to go on to tents and tablecloths and all kinds of stuff. So I'm just putting it out there.
Okay, thank you. Thomas, I see your hand, and then Tammy, I think.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I was just going to say that I think either the year before, we had talked about potentially buying more flags that would go en masse for veterans, but the city had already ordered a number of flags, and they had to purchase new ones. So there is a program running for flags so that we didn't have to commit money to that.
Yeah. So that's all a good thing. All right. Heritageberry. Tammy.
I was just searching my emails, and last year, in 2020, we donated, the committee donated $100 to the Poppy Fund. Last year in 2020.
All right.
So.
Do we want to do that again? Shelley.
Yes, I was just, yes, if we did a motion, I was already there.
It's that darn mute button. All right. We don't need a motion for that. I mean,
we just need to approve the expenditure. That's all.
Yeah.
So.
Do you want to approve the expenditure for $100 to the Poppy Fund? Yeah, I see nods all around. So, all right. Shelley. Yeah, you're good. All right.
No, that was it.
Okay. All right, Heritageberry Awards. Thomas, are you, where are we with the awards? Any responses?
I have not gotten any nominations. For everybody watching, nominations are currently open. So if you go on barrie.ca/heritage, you'll be able to find a little tile for the Heritage Awards. Click on that and there's a nomination package. I think nominations are open until the 26th of November. There is more press coming out about the Heritage Awards. We're doing a takeover on I think Barrie today. So when you go to Barrie today, you'll actually see on the sides, it'll actually show, nominate for Heritageberry Awards. We are currently getting postcards printed that we'll be distributing to our partners who we met with at the last meeting. And other than that, I don't have any other updates. I wasn't the one who asked for this item to be put on the committee, so I'm not sure if there was a committee member that had questions for me, but I don't have anything else.
Okay, Shelley.
Thanks, Thomas. And I'm really impressed, and I really thank you for sending through the communication tactics, because that really gave, I'm a marketing background, so it really gave me an idea of what you're doing. And I thought it was a really fulsome plan. So like, kudos to you and the team for doing it. It was really good. I guess the only thing I was going to suggest, because I know it came out of the stakeholder meeting, was it's great that you're, I think, doing the postcards, which, if I hear you right, you were going to send out to the members from the stakeholder meeting, which those 8 or 10 people or whatever. So the only other thing I was going to say, that sometimes it would be good if we could email them a copy of the press release, because sometimes they will use, because then they have content, then they have messaging, and then they would maybe use that to put onto a newsletter, or or send out, like the BIA, they may just send it as a press release out as is, and it includes everything that you would want to know about the Heritage Awards. So as another one, that was the one thing I didn't see on there, because it was really following up on the stakeholder meeting. So I don't know if that can be done, or who would do that, or if we should do it, or if Tammy does it, or do you want me to do it, or how does that get done?
That's a good, sorry, Chair, I can take that. I think, were you going to direct that to me? I apologize, I jumped in there.
No problem.
I was going to just say, Shelley, it's a great suggestion. We can certainly do that. So I can do that for the committee. And Tammy did remind me and correct me that I did ask for this item to be put on the agenda because we do need a top up for our Heritageberry Awards budget item or line item. I think we're looking for another $500 or up to $500 for heritage material, just like these postcards, for example, purchasing the ad space on Barrie Today, and so on and so forth. I don't think it's going to be 500, but it's up to. So I think we have 2,500 allocated at the moment, so we need another 5.
Okay. All right. Let's just deal with that for the moment. Everybody okay with putting an extra 500 into that kitty? Got the thumbs up. You're away to the races, Thomas.
Sure.
Kathy. You're on mute.
I want to say the same thing as Shelley, is I just think Melanie did a really good job putting that package of information together for the communications on everything that was going to be done. So that's all I wanted to say. That was great.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments on the Heritage Awards? I would just encourage each member of the committee, if you know of any property or any person that you think might be a candidate for an award, don't be afraid to make that suggestion, because we like really to involve as many people as we possibly can. So it would be good. Kathy, you're still on mute.
There's 2 properties that we're working on designating. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if maybe, you know, one of those or two of those properties, because they're going to designate whether they might be candidates, whether they're, I can't remember if they're both commercial or residential, but maybe one of those properties, because they are going the route of designation, maybe that's what we should look at. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Thomas.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so we do, we're currently in the works for getting work done for 125 and 127 Dunlop Street, being Bohemia. And that process is moving along. The other building was Simcoe County Gall. That likely won't happen this year. I would perhaps recommend that the committee, like that, I'm not sure if that's a great candidate for an award per se, just because it's, I mean, we'd be giving an award to the province essentially. So
No, but maybe Bohemia.
perhaps, yeah.
All right.
Just a thought.
Yeah, and you know what? It doesn't have to be, you know, a designated or a listed building. I think there's probably a whole lot in the downtown area that, or elsewhere, that certainly could use an award. All right. Any more discussion on the Heritage Awards? Okay.
Should we give an award to the train?
We would have to give ourselves an award. Is that it? All right. 22 Heritage Week. Thomas, did you want to lead us off on that, or?
I can. I think, unless Tammy corrects me with this one too, I don't think I was looking to speak to this one, but I can start the conversation just by saying Heritage Week. We will be doing our Heritage Awards. That's when we'll be issuing our 2021 Heritage Awards during Heritage Week or at that council meeting. I'm not sure if it's happening the day before or after, or if it's happening on Heritage Week. I remember 2 years ago when we actually did the in-person awards, we actually had to do it, I think, a week after or a week before. So it all depends on when we have Family Day. But that's the only item we have at this point for Heritage Week, or I myself have for the committee.
Okay, Tammy, I see your light came on.
What's the time? Do you know the dates for the Heritage Week?
I do. It's the third week of February. I'm just going to quickly Google it to make sure that I'm correct here.
I know there's Family Day in there, so, and I thought there was a council meeting on the 14th for next year, February 14th. I could be wrong, but let me.
I think that this year, our 2022 Ontario Heritage Trust Heritage Week says that it's February 15th to the 21st. And I think Family Day is the week after. So 15th to the 21st.
Family Day is on the 21st.
Oh, that's 2021.
Oh.
So I feel like it's going to be that third week. Like it usually falls in that third week, but they don't have an actual date yet.
Okay.
We'll figure it out. Deb.
Yeah, don't we usually have a proclamation put together for that week as well? And does Ontario Heritage Trust or whoever drives this, do they have a theme for next year that might help us with our planning? Typically, they have some sort of theme this week, like medical history or this or that.
Sure.
Do we know?
There is nothing on their website, and I haven't received any notification from the Simcoe County. And usually we partner through them, and they host a page for us or any of our buildings that we. Sorry, I'm thinking of Doors Open, but at this point, I haven't received any communication for Heritage Week on that, and their website still refers to 2021.
Oh, we have lots of time anyways.
Yeah.
We'll go to our awards. Okay.
I just looked at the calendar, and February 14th, 2022 is a council meeting. So if that falls within that time frame.
That'll be a very loving meeting, I'm sure. Shelley.
Thank you, Councillor. Just forgive me, what in, like, the Heritage Week is not a Heritage Committee initiation at all. This is an Ontario or provincial Heritage Week for us to all celebrate things. And so, okay, good. I'm here seeing a lot of nods. And so what did we, in, 5 words or less, what did we do last year or this year in 2021 for Heritage Week?
Thomas, Craig.
Well, last year with COVID was a little, we didn't do as much, but before COVID, we did a presentation to the council on our what Heritage Committee does and those sorts of things. So that's what we did before. We did the proclamation, and then one of the things we were going to be having the awards handed out for Heritage Week to promote heritage, and we actually had the recipients, because it was virtual, were on, and they basically talked about how amazing it was to receive the awards. That was really, really, really heartfelt. And the other thing we did was we had the counselors who, whatever building it was in their ward, they actually were giving the awards. And maybe it wasn't when we did virtually, but before that. And I thought that was amazing, because then it got other counselors, talking about the buildings in their ward. So I think that was a really great thing. And if we can continue that somehow, I think that's a win for us. We got to really sell our committee and how important it is. And this is our week to shine. That's the way we looked at it.
Yep, I think you're absolutely right. I think it worked really well virtually, and let's hope that maybe by February we can do it in person. But even if we can't, we'll do it virtually, and we'll try to make a big bang out of it. Kaylee.
I was just going to add, in previous years, we haven't really done too much for a Heritage Week because it's sort of something newer we were going to do stuff with. Like, we just changed the Heritage Awards to be given out during Heritage Week. And then with COVID, so we haven't really done too much. So one of the things on our agenda was to add to Heritage Week and try and come up with other things to actually do. So we haven't really scheduled out a whole week or too many things yet. So that's one thing that we have been working on, is stuff to do during Heritage Week.
Councillor Harris.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Chair. And yeah, good point, Kaylee. I think one thing we've talked about before, I think we've done to a certain degree of success, not me, but the other members of this committee who are really talented at writing and representing heritage, but really trying to have a purposeful media campaign so that we will be on print and hopefully on media with great interesting articles about Barrie's heritage, right? I mean, so I think that was one of our items of interest before, was to really get out there in front of the media with, like, start populating some stories so they know they've got something to really push all week in the heritage. We talked about gatherings before, but we recognize that, and like I've given my speech about doing Mental Health Awareness Week and Children's Mental Health Week and Addiction Awareness Week, it's when you have events, you get the choir, like, so, but we really want media impressions. We really want to get as much bang for the social media and conventional media as we can, newspaper stories on heritage on that week. So I think that was kind of where we landed before. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments on this one? Shelley.
So is it like, so thank you, Councillor. So directing more to Kaylee. So is this something, because I know that you had talked a little bit about the past and how the Heritage Committee works together, and sometimes they lead a particular project. Remember, we talked about that, and I think it's in the plan. So is this somebody on the committee's project, and therefore we would be meeting, I don't know, as a subcommittee or whatever, to talk about, to meet, to talk about what are we going to do to prepare you know, to Councillor Harris's point, you know, what media stories, you know, is Deb going to get involved? Can she provide, you know, content to media, like to have a little bit of a strategy and a plan together to get some media coverage, which I think is a great idea. So how does that work in the committee? Does somebody lead it and then, or we just talk about it? How does it work?
Kaylee.
So we haven't really done too much for Heritage Week, so there isn't really a subcommittee for it. But I would expect that if someone has an idea for something, that they might either head it up, or a few people might get together and form a subcommittee to be able to pull it off, whatever it is. So we'd have to sort of come up with a plan of what we want to do first, and then figure out what we need to do in order to pull it off. Whether we need people or just people to write stuff for the media releases or organize different events. So we'll have to figure out what we're going to do and then sort of establish how we're going to do it.
Yeah, I think that's and I think Heritageberry has worked really well when we handed off a job like this to a subcommittee, and they run with it and come back. So it's maybe a good idea to actually do that. Kathy, you're on mute.
This was really just for, again, for Shelley and the group, I guess. Something we had done previously, and I can't remember if it was Heritage Week, where we did the event in the Rotunda. So we set up tables and we set up all our stuff, sort of like what we did with Open Air Dunlop, but it was indoors. So maybe that's something we could do, an indoor event at a historical location during that week. And something else that was done previously, a couple of years ago, was the walking tours at City Hall on the second floor. So we had posters made up, and they were really nice posters that talked about guided walking tour of the second floor of City Hall, because there's quite a number of artifacts there as well. And there was a number of people that attended those as well.
All right. Well, what's your pleasure? Do we want to form a little subcommittee to sort of take a good hard look at what we could do for Heritage Week in addition to what we're doing already? Kaylee, would you be prepared to head a little committee doing that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. And Sarah, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say, perhaps this is something that we could all go away with, and then next committee meeting, come back, and if you have an idea, then we can say it to the group and see if the group is on board. But that would be something then that if Kaylee's going to head a subcommittee, that subcommittee could then take our collective ideas and see maybe what we can run with it, or if anyone else wants to assist in that endeavor.
All right, that's a great suggestion. So let's think about it for our next meeting, and then we'll pull something together. We have a couple of months anyway, so we have a bit of time. All right. The next item is Heritage Plaques. Thomas.
Thank you, Councillor. I just wanted to give the committee a quick update, because I've had quite a bit of back and forth on this item. So I originally presented a proof to the committee for the plaques. We discussed, and this was all done by email. And via email, we had discussed about making the plaques a little smaller to make them look, to differentiate between a designated plaque and listed plaques. And I proceeded with Owen Sidecraft to do that. And turns out that they cannot CNC the city logo on a plaque of that size. So we do have to go with a size bigger. So there is going to be a cost increase to that a little bit. I'm still waiting to get a firm quote from them, but I think it's going to be, it may actually be the same as the 6x9, just because they operate by size. So you can go between a certain size and it's one price, but as soon as you step over that 10 inch, then it jumps higher. So the quote they gave me was $409 per plaque plus install plus tax. So I'm trying to find something that is smaller and we can still get it CNC'd. So I just wanted to give the committee an update as to why it's taking so long for me to be able to get this, just because it takes time for me to communicate with Owen Signcraft, come back to the committee, get approvals. And now this is the third time I have to go back to the committee and let you know where we are. So if the committee is okay with me proceeding with making the plaques the same size as the designated plaques, the only differentiation will be the one is going to be cast bronze and the other one's going to be CNC aluminum with black writing and a black outline. That's, I don't think we need to pass a motion. I just wanted to let everybody know and give you an opportunity to ask questions.
All right. Any questions for Thomas? Michelle?
So, silly question perhaps, but I know there are plaques on houses in Barrie now. And so are we not just following what we have done in the past so that, why are we, it sounds like to me reinventing the wheel, but I don't mean it negatively, but why are we going through this discussion, I guess, because it's not the first time we've put a plaque on a house.
That's a good question. I am not familiar with a previous process for putting plaques on listed buildings. There is a process for getting plaques on designated buildings, and that's a pretty standard process because we went to the same company that did them for us in the past, and those are the 4 plaques we did last year, and mostly around the downtown. So we don't have a process for listed buildings. This is a new thing. There may be plaques or signs on existing homes. Anecdotally, I know from Kathy and Craig that there's houses on William Street and Cumberland Street that have wooden plaques. I'm not sure where those plaques come from. I think maybe owners put up their own signs. But as far as I am aware, hasn't been a program for listed buildings to receive plaques.
So we're setting precedent here in terms of establishing what a listed plaque would look like versus a designated plaque. Just so I'm correct, designated plaque, we're going to carry on getting the same type of plaque so that they look like ones that we've designated previously, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're just, well, not, but we're talking about setting precedent for getting a listed plaque organized.
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted clarification.
Oh, that's fine. No problem.
Thank you.
Kathy and then Craig.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, something's wrong with your sound. I think try again.
Hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh,
yeah. Okay, sorry. I was going to say there was Heritageberry previously. I don't think it was whether they were listed because it wasn't related to listed. They did put plaques on various buildings around town. There were the designated plaques, yes, the bronze designated plaques, but there is also, there was, I believe it was wood plaque painted. It was the white with the blue. I've got, if you look through one of the documents, it's in there. So Heritageberry did that. I think just recognizing buildings. I don't think it was recognition of you're a listed building, but you're maybe culturally, you're a cultural resource. So this is the first year we've done that. And then the ones that we've talked about in Allendale, Craig and his students did that. So.
I was just going to say, I did a little presentation about signs when we first started the committee, different ones in areas like Cookstown and Bradford, and then of course Allendale and Barrie, and they're really eclectic. So there's no specific form. There's white wooden ones, and the problem with that is that they're wearing down. The city has them, those bronze, which is kind of what we copied. We decided that we'd go with that, so it's sort of consistency. We've never had listed ones done. This is new, and we decided that was an important thing. So I guess we're just determining, and I think we got to the point that we just need to say yes and get them up. And the other thing I was going to say is we've sent out these, emails to people that we want to put these plaques on. And as soon as we can decide this, it'd be nice to get them done and up, because then people are like, oh, wow, okay. And then the buzz goes out, and that would be really great. So hopefully we can get this done as soon as we can. It'd be great. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Thomas, do you need any more direction from this committee at this point? It seems to me that you're basically looking at getting a price for those signs, given that they need to be a little bit bigger. And as far as I'm concerned, go for it. Are you okay with that? I see you, Shelley. But go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Chair. No, I don't need any other direction. I have a significant amount of funds I could use to do this. I think I should still be able to get all of the list of all the people who expressed interest in getting a plaque. We should be able to get them one. The only other thing that is up in the air a little bit is not all property owners know when their property was built. So we decided on putting a circuit date, as we do with the designated plaques. I think, for those properties, we might not put a circuit date if we're not absolutely sure. If the owner has something that shows a date, if there's a plan or if there's some sort of document or something that says when the lot was created, we could probably guess as to a date. But when an owner just shrugs and says, I have no idea, then I wouldn't feel comfortable assigning a date, because, a couple years time, somebody will say, well, this is wrong. And so it's still good to just recognize that plaque on the wall. And I've spoken to a few owners, because I went around taking pictures of recent Heritage Register editions, and people poked out of their doors and said, what are you doing? So most of the people who I've spoken with are getting a plaque, and they're excited about that.
Yeah, I think everybody is very keen on that. All right, Shelley, and then Sarah, and then Kathy.
Thank you, Councillor. I was just going to suggest, it doesn't have to be long-winded, but, even if we create a signage policy so that we just understand, if it's listed, the sign's going to look this, and, what the font is, and if it's because we're setting precedent here, we're establishing the listed, and then we can also list what a designated one looks like, and, maybe the number of characters and what goes on a plaque, and, and the type font, just so that we set it up. It could be a 1-pager or a 2-pager, so that next year, whoever's continues on in the committee, we have a policy for signs, and whether or not there's a difference between, I don't know, residential versus commercial, or, but some kind of a sign policy. I'm just recommending that we do that. So just so it's clear for us and for moving forward.
Yep.
And I'd be happy to help with that.
All right. Thomas, it looks like you've got Shelley ready to help you with something like that. I'm sure that you've got some documentation, and I suppose it's probably a really good idea to do that, because this committee will pass into the distant future in a year from now. So the next committee will have to pick it up. So that's a really great idea. All right, Sarah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, for the listed plaques, for the sake of efficiency, would it be better to just not have a date on any of them, so that we don't have to spend time trying to find that information? We get a gist of a date, but the fact that at any moment they could unlist and therefore take their property off our list, and therefore you would need to take the plaque off of the house if for some reason somebody wants to do that. If we don't have a specific date on the plaque, then perhaps that could be used again in the off chance that the owner doesn't want it. And then that way it would be a little easier maybe for people to discern between the designated and the listed, because not a lot of people are going to recognize between the two types of material alone that's the difference. So if we did on our plaque, rather than in that date spot, you just put listed, then it does become a bit more recognized and then interchangeable if on the off chance somebody does decide to take their listed building off.
All right. Any comment on that, Thomas?
I don't think that's a bad idea. It's you know, if somebody doesn't want it installed, or one owner just maybe they don't remove it from the register, but they don't want the plaque there or something, you know, aesthetically, they can return it to us and we could potentially install it on another building. That's not a bad idea. I would just need consensus from the committee on that before I proceed.
Yeah. All right. Any other comments on that suggestion so that Thomas knows where to go with that? Kathy, I see your hand up.
Yeah. Okay. I was just going to say, Thomas, do you have an idea of how many you don't know the dates on?
I don't actually know.
Is there a large number? Because,
yes,
you know, if you wanted to do that, I mean, I could certainly go in and try to identify the dates. You know, some of them, I know one of the ones you had said that was right here on Cumberland Street, 84 Cumberland. The guy, when he applied, didn't know. Well, we know the dates because it's, you know, it's right next door to Barb's house, which is in the book. It's like 1887, 1888. You know, we don't know the exact date, but I don't know the exact date of my house either. So, but if it was circa 1880s or circa 1880, you know, 5 or 1890, I mean, does it have to be, because lots of times you don't know the actual date.
Yeah, I mean, most of the buildings are typically going to be Victorian or Gothic farmhouse, and those have a pretty specific date range.
Right.
It's a fairly wide date range. So if we said 1800 to, you know, 1880s, you know, you'd probably that's
no, but I'm just
wide, so.
You know, like, you know, for the, you know, for instance, 84 Cumberland Street, we know it's 1880s.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be circa 1880.
I you know what, Kathy, I can do anything the committee wants. So if we want to put 1880s, they can do that. Just keep in mind it is around.
Like circa is circa, right? Is the general time frame. It's not specific to, it's like 1881 or 1882. It's circa.
Yes. So to answer your first question, there's 18 plaques that we're getting. I would probably say about a third of them know and 2/3 wouldn't know. Right. Like a good date.
Right. Okay, because we could probably figure that out easily enough. But I also like, and I'm sorry, was it Kaylee's idea or Sarah's idea of the no date too? That's good. But are people actually going to return them? Would be the, you know, if they delist, would they actually return them?
I'm going to suggest you're on the committee, Kathy, to do sign policy. And we'll talk about it with Thomas.
Yeah.
I'm busy.
No, you're not.
Right, Kaylee.
I like Sarah's suggestion just to keep it simple because they are just listed. They're not designated as much as we like to have them. They haven't committed to actually being designated, so they need to be a bit different than the designated ones. I don't know if we need a mold for them either, so that might make the production of them quicker. If they're all just the same, then they can all be done and put up maybe quicker as well.
Yes, Golden Signcraft didn't tell me. Sorry, Chair, I just jumped in there. Craig, sorry, you had your hand up.
Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, I think if there no date on it and it can be done quicker, and there's small plaques, the date listed or the date, it's so small. Like from a distance, you wouldn't be able to really see the date anyways, but you could see that it was listed. So you know, maybe that would be good, you know.
Yeah, and I suppose it would certainly be more efficient for Owen Soundcraft, and we might even get better break on the price. Shelley?
I was just gonna ask Deb and Kathy, remember that house that we went to on Collier or Blake? You know, that we talked to the guy outside. He didn't want to designate the property, but he had a sign, and I think it said like, you know, some farmer built it, or I don't know, it was some like whoever built it. What kind of a sign was that, Deb?
I think he already had a sign on there, and I thought it was the wooden one. It looked like white.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just looking up the house. Yeah, he already has a sign.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Thomas, have you got enough direction? I see Sarah here. No? Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of will they give it back, I feel like we could probably say, as a general rule, if you delist, you return the sign, like just make it a point of order that if that's something that they want to do, then it's a requirement so that they kind of have no option.
Yeah, I agree. And the other part of it is I'm not sure that very many are going to delist anyway, but it certainly is a possibility. Kathy, I see your hand up. Is that, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I do have a question. When we, Thomas, when you sent the original letter out asking people if they would like a plaque for their listed property, did we say to them at that point that we would be putting the circa on it? Just so, because I think I know at least one person that is going to be very disappointed if the date is not on hers. But I don't know what you originally, you know, when we went out and asked them, what did we say that we were going to put a circa date on it? Or did we just say a listed plaque?
I am attempting to open the letter at the moment.
Okay.
Just freezing up here, so I don't recall.
Yeah, and if we didn't tell them it was going to be a circa date on there, then that's a non-issue. I think, you know.
Sorry, guys, I'm just freezing. I don't know what's going on with my computer.
All right. Do we have a consensus on what Thomas ought to do? Do we want dates on these listed building signs or not? That is the question.
And I think if we know what we asked, like, did we tell them they were going to get that? And that's what Thomas is trying to find out. If we didn't ever say to them that there was going to be a circa date, then it's a non-issue. Then I think we don't, you know, from my perspective, the date doesn't need to be on there. But if when we sent the letter, we said we were going to put the date, then.
Okay, so I'm back, Kathy.
Okay, go ahead, Thomas.
Sorry, guys, I don't know if I'm cutting out or what's going on, but looking at our letter, and it describes the plaque being approximately 8 by 10. We'll have the crest along with a description of City of Barrie Heritage Building, along with the circle date that denotes when the building was constructed. So I think, you know, there is no cost difference if we put dates on it or not. So we can do individual ones. If there's an owner who really, really wants it, we can do it. And if they're not sure, we could just leave it blank. I was going to be calling or emailing everybody who's expressed interest to confirm whether they know and what date they're comfortable with putting on. And my recommendation to me would be, if you don't know, if you don't have anything to tie, if you don't have some sort of evidence to give you a date, just leave it blank. And we could use that. We could put that in our policy document. If we know, let's put it. If we don't know, leave it blank.
Yeah.
There's no expediency either. It's all done on a machine. So it'll take 4 seconds less or so to make one that has no date on it versus one that has a date on it.
All right, everybody comfortable with that? Okay, great. Thomas, there you go. Now you know. All right, our next item is to debrief the Heritage Stakeholders meeting that we had last month. And Shelley has the floor.
Thank you, Councillor. I sent out some notes that I had just done personally, just as a way to try and understand all that happened in what it was a fantastic meeting. And again, I want to thank Kathy for leading, and Craig, for your involvement, and Councillor Rupa. I think it went really well, and Tammy for all your help getting everyone together. I mean, I think the committee did a fantastic job, and I think it was, I think first of all, as I said, it was great that we had 8, I think, in attendance, so, and I don't know if everyone knows all of those people, but certainly we had lots of from BIA, and you can go to the I won't go on about it because I know that it was recorded, and as Tammy said, you can always go online for anyone that missed the meeting to get caught up on it. But there was 4 areas that we talked about. First was the communication strategy. So I'm just going to highlight things that I kind of made note of that I think were follow-up for the committee. And so I think all the participants, with regards to the communication strategy, said that they would be happy to help. And they talked about needing, what messages need to go out to whom, with dates, either key suggested messages. And from a marketing point of view, I just wrote that basically what they're looking for is a content calendar, which is a very marketing thing that you do when you're going to either post things through social media, digital media, to a website, whatever. So I think that way they're looking for a content calendar from the committee, so that then they understand the messages, and they're all singing off the same song sheet, and they would be happy to send that out to various members of their various associations or tourism committees or the city itself. So that was, I think, a priority for the Heritage Committee to get a content calendar together. So that was the first takeaway, I believe. And even, as I said, Kelly from the BIA was, more than happy to send that stuff out, but we have to give her that stuff so she can send it out. Secondly was the discussion about growing heritage tourism. But there was also the conversation that we had before that about the conservation districts and signage. And it was suggested, and I guess it's more similar to what we're talking about with Heritage Week or whatever, but it was suggested that we do a presentation to BIA to promote this to businesses, and as far as what was the strength and for businesses to recognize the value of old buildings. So that was basically because BIA was in attendance. Whether or not we do another promotion or a presentation to members of the public or somehow talk about that, that was also something we could look at. And that was also discussing highway and downtown signage, and looking at maybe Barrie and Aurelia and Collingwood and others that have been doing that. And Stephanie, who we just had in our meeting, suggested that there is a wayfinding project underway, and that was what you heard from her tonight, that she is going to, she offered to the committee at that point to come back and talk to us, which I hear is obviously next month, to talk a little bit about the master tourism plan and how the wayfinding project or signage, which is part of that. So we'll probably hear more about that. Then we had a discussion a little bit more about the growing heritage tourism. And we talked about, as we have a little bit tonight, about doors open in conflict with Culture Day. So it's up to us to kind of, work that through. And then we talked about the public art and murals, and we met Carol Ann Ryan, who's the new city public art coordinator, and her goals are to expand this program. And so she is linked in with Stephanie, and that is also was the second presentation that Stephanie, I think, volunteered Carol Ann to do, which was a presentation to us about the public art plan. And so we can see how Heritage Committee can fit in with that, and that may affect our budget if there's something that they recommend next month that they want our help with, and vice versa, where maybe there's areas within the city that we could put up some murals. So that was the public art and murals. And then the last was kind of the Heritage Awards and communication, which I think that we have talked a lot about tonight. But I know the chamber suggested they could help again with help sending out notices. And it comes back to, oh, the one thing I was going to mention is we also talked about grant writing. And I recorded in there that Stephanie said she'd have to take it back to the city. But meanwhile, Brianne, is it Dubo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Tourism Simcoe, she volunteered, as she said it's part of her current responsibility. So we need to put that in the back of our head when we need a grant writer. And she said they don't need to be overcomplicated. They can be very simple. So I think that's a resource that we gained through having the stakeholder meeting that we could get back to later. So without taking too much more time, that was just my little summary that you all have, but there's a few takeaways there. One being, I think, the content calendar, and then look forward to Stephanie's presentations to hopefully next month to see how we can work together. But I thought it was a fantastic meeting and a really great collaboration of some pretty key people.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. That's well done. And you're right, it was a good session. And I think we now need to pick up some of these pieces and carry them on. Any questions or comments for Shelley? Kathy?
I just wanted to say that after the meeting, the next day I got a phone call from Kathleen Trainer in Tourism Barrie to talk a little bit about how she could maybe do a little bit of a crash course with us on how to prepare and put together content, if we thought that would be beneficial in any way.
Well, we can certainly accept any volunteer help anytime. Any other comments or questions on that? All right. Between now and next meeting, I'll take a look at that in detail, and we'll kind of put some of those items on the agenda for our to-do list. How's that? Okay, all right. The subcommittee on the Bradford properties report. And who was that? Did we ever do anything on that Bradford group? No. Okay, just on that one, the council quite some time ago, before COVID, wanted to, if I'm not mistaken, there was something going on because the city owns those buildings and they were going to be used for the expansion of the treatment plant. And this committee said, whoa, we may want to look at them for heritage purposes as well. And I think the way that it was left was that staff was going to do some work on them. And the Heritageberry was also asked to sort of put up our reasons for saying, whoa. So Thomas, am I sort of paraphrasing this correctly?
Yes, Chair, that's correct. So staff are at a point where we can proceed with the staff report forward to General Committee. However, the staff report going to General Committee should go at the same time as Heritageberry's report as well. So so staff are recommending that this committee strike a subcommittee to write that report, or if an individual member wants to take on that, take that on, then it's up to the committee however you'd like to do that. It just it can't be staff.
All right, Kathy. You are on mute.
Oh, there was a heritage impact study done, Thomas, on these properties, if I'm not mistaken. Heritage impact assessment.
No, there was
impact something.
It wasn't a heritage impact assessment. It was an evaluation.
Oh, right.
It was more of like, we called it a cultural heritage resource inventory, because it wasn't a full blown assessment. So there was a consultant that went on site and did an on-site eval and compared it to the criteria. but they didn't do the full process. And we shared that report with the committee a while back, I think.
Right, okay. And then I think you, if I'm not mistaken, you wanted you're asking for a report, but really like just a memo rationalizing why we think they should be listed. Is that what you're waiting on?
I'm just sorry, I had to restart, and I'm just logging into my VPN so I could find the actual motion for the committee. But if you just give me 15 seconds or so, I should be able to pull that up. But there's specific wording in that motion. That's why I just want to make sure we have it correctly. So this is actually from 2020. One moment, please. Bradford Properties. So direction 20G046 Municipal Heritage Register says that the Heritage Committee be requested to provide a memorandum concerning the committee's rationale for adding the city-owned properties onto the Municipal Heritage Register. So it doesn't have to be, I'm not sure how the committee wants to frame that memorandum, but if it's a one-pager or a multi-page document, but staff are writing a staff report to general committee.
So staff are already writing a staff report. Do we have any idea which direction they're going in? Can I ask that? Is that a—
Yeah, certainly. So we're not making a recommendation in that report just because we're not asked to make a recommendation.
Right.
It says to review the addition of the city-owned properties and report back to. So that's what we've done. We reviewed the report, and we are, providing basically a summary of impacts both ways, what it means to list those properties for the city.
I think, now that you're jogging my memory, I think what actually happened was, there was some discussion around this table about properties that could be listed, and these properties were suggested. And when that came through, that kind of hit general committee and stopped. And that motion that you just read is the result of that.
Right.
So we now need, I think, to put a memo together to say why these properties should be listed. So is that something you can do, Kathy?
Yeah. Maybe with sure, I can try, and if I need to, I'll reach out to Deb. She might be able to help me if I get stuck and can't figure out what to say.
Sure.
Or do we have, let me ask a question. Is there an example anywhere of what has previously been done in terms of rationale, or is it just as simple as, rationale when we want to list our house, why we think our house should be listed?
Yeah, I don't think that there is a formula for this, Kathy.
Okay.
I think you look at the situation and say why. And if Deb is willing to help you, that would be great. And if you need me to do some wordsmithing as well, I'm available at your disposal. Councillor Harris, and then Shelley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just thinking, I know you remembered it as I remember it, Mr. Chair, that, we were looking about trying to encourage more listed properties, and we came across these, and when it landed on the council, if I remember correctly, it wasn't simply just the expansion of the treatment facility, but I believe there was a possibility, if I remember correctly, from Councillor Aylwin, affordable housing project, I think possibly for that corner. So I remember that, but I guess one of the questions could be, I guess the challenge from the city is that, if your plan is to take down these buildings which you own and you throw a listed designate on it, I guess how does that look? But do we still want to push back to the city to list or designated buildings, or list buildings that we know that they have confirmed that they will be removing? Is that, now that we have that information, we want to continue on with that listing, knowing the city has structured these properties to be repurposed and removed.
All right, Shelley and then Thomas.
So quickly, I don't know if it was just blocked in my memory or if it was before my time. So is there a list of the properties that we're talking about, number one, and are they in fact already historically significant?
I can, I think there are 3 houses. I may be quite wrong with that, but I think 3 houses. One of them is the Midway Diner. I think they may or may not be historically significant. They certainly have a long track record, especially the diner. Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to address Councillor Harris's comments in that the committee did deliberate this matter. I want to say it was August of 2020 or just before COVID, or was it probably earlier? And there was some committee members that expressed concern about listing a building, and then that was purchased with the intent of demolition so that the wastewater treatment facility can be expanded. Then the committee voted and we passed a motion to list, and that as the chair mentioned, it did get to, I believe, either city building or general committee, and then staff or council, members of council at that point said, there's a concern here because there may be impacts further down the road, which led to this motion. And Shelley, there is 4 buildings actually. When the committee passed the motion, we missed one of them. It's 151 to 161. So there's 4 buildings. So there's 151, 155, 157, and 161 Bradford Street. So the city owns all those buildings. And as part of the process to address the motion, staff did hire an external consultant to do an evaluation, and I shared the results of that evaluation with the committee. That consultant did not find any cultural heritage value in any four buildings. And they are older buildings. They are, I think one may be a reproduction of, or an attempted reproduction of a heritage building. And then the other ones are historic in that they're probably over 100 years old.
Okay, Kathy.
Now I just lost my train of thought. Are the buildings, I'm sorry, I think Councillor Harris said something that caught me off guard. Do we know for a fact that these buildings are potentially going to come down because there's a potential for affordable housing? Is that?
Thomas,
Because
you answer that?
All I can say that from planning's perspective and my involvement in review of development applications, I'm not aware if that is the case, but Councillor Harris may have more advanced knowledge than I.
Okay.
Yeah, and sorry, I'll just, if I may, Mr. Chair, I don't want to start any rumors. I just know that's speculative, but that was a comment that was made to me. And as we know how things go, things don't always happen as hoped or planned, but that was a comment made to me, but it could never be happening, Kathy, for sure, to be honest.
okay, because at one point I know that the owner of the Midway Diner told me he signed a lease for 10 years. So at least 10 years. So I know that, I mean, and that could change because if the city decided that they wanted to, buy him out of his lease and knock down the building, but certainly I can try to put something together. I know that whoever did the inventory evaluation didn't find it to be, but there is history, especially with the Midway building, for sure. And so, I'll write something up and we can submit it and see what happens from there.
Sure. Okay, Kathy, it's in your ballpark. Sarah.
Yeah, I was just wondering if this is something that we're kind of at odds with the city. is there something that in our recommendation that we send to them, our rationale for why it is important? Would this be something that we'd be willing to say, we understand that the area is needing development, possibly, whether it be housing or the treatment facility expansion, that we would be okay if the buildings were perhaps repurposed or the facade kept and integrated? Because I know we were talking about that with the downtown theater, because we recognize that development needs to be done in certain areas, but we are hoping to preserve some of that history. So is this something where, I suppose as a committee, we can balance that, want to have them listed? And I know listing makes no protection. If they were designated, you could probably offer something a little bit more concrete. But in our sort of justification back as to why we feel that it is important, is there a way that we could, sort of meet a middle ground and offer them a little bit of wiggle room, that we could maybe have both options where they get their development if necessary, and we can also protect it? Just wondering.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any limit to what we could recommend to council. And certainly, some kind of creative reuse or acknowledgement that the buildings are there, or who knows, there's all kinds of ways it could be done. And it depends a little bit, I think, on what the city's actual construction looks like there. Are they do they need it for a road, and that's the end of it, or are they building some sort of building there? And if they're building a building there, maybe there's something that we can do to acknowledge the past. So I think there's no reason why we couldn't add that to a report to kind of make the case. Any other comments on that one? All right, Kathy, you're on it, and I'm quite happy to give you some help if you need it, and I'm sure Deb will too. All right, the Allendale Go Tunnel art, and Thomas, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So this is another thing I'm asking the committee to strike a subcommittee to help move this along. This has been something that has sort of dragged on a little bit just due to capacity issues, and also as the city implements a formal process for funding, processing, evaluating, and just helping move other public art projects along. So now we have a formal process in place. I actually met with Carol Ann, who was on the at the previous meeting, at the stakeholder meeting, and we actually walked the site. We have a plan in place, but we need guidance from the committee. But it's just too cumbersome to try to get to every meeting. Do it once a month. So we are looking for a subcommittee to be struck so that we can get direction from that subcommittee on how to proceed on certain administrative and financial matters and things like that.
All right. Do we have any volunteers? Craig, did you just put up your hand to volunteer?
Yeah, because I was working on this or like earlier, and I'd be interested in helping. I know Councillor Harris probably was talking, so he can help out. I don't mind getting involved in that and sort of getting ahead on that. That'd be great.
Great. And Councillor Harris, would you be willing to support that effort? I mean, it's not like you don't have anything else to do, really.
I've got a full set of pencil crayons, and I'm ready to go.
Okay, excellent.
I would, I can't pass that opportunity to work with Craig, so that's the first attraction. So, but yeah, and I know we did have, and there was a change, but we did have at one point an interested party with McLaren. So, but definitely with Carol Ann involved, and I'm not sure what I can offer, but I know we got Metrolinx involved, and they were happy so that worked out well. So there's been changes there. I just got reached out from the new community person. Sam Burgos is gone now. I just found that out this week, but happy to help if I can. And yeah, it's an exciting project. So
great.
Thanks for moving it forward, Thomas. I appreciate your efforts on this. You carried the ball for a while.
And I think your connection also, Councillor Harris, with McLaren may come in handy as time goes along. So thank you very much for volunteering. That's great. All right, Thomas, you've got what you need there. And the next thing is the status of potential listings to the Municipal Heritage Register. We got a whole list here.
Wow.
Go for it, Thomas.
That's right. So I had everything prepared to show the committee pictures and everything. So I'm going to have to ask for just a bit of patience while I get things reopened. So we're going to start with 123 Toronto. 123 Toronto, and I'm going to share my screen in one second. So we did not get any pictures from the applicant for 123 Toronto, so we'll just have to use Google Maps. So let me just quickly share my screen. Screen 3. So everybody should be seeing, nope, that's the wrong one. Let me try again. I believe I clicked screen.
Oh, I think it's the right one.
Yeah, I think it might be.
Okay. Can everybody see my Google Maps screen?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes.
So this is right next to 125 Toronto, which we already have on the register. So neighbors must have been chatting and talked about it and decided to list. I'm just going to see if there is a date for construction on this. I will try not to show any personal information. So 1 second.
Thomas, these are just listings, not designations.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Just while Thomas is getting this ready, this just shows like our outreach, because I know the house on the left was from us being downtown, and now the house on the right, you know, obviously probably they were talking. So just shows that, you know, it's working our education and connecting the community. So I think that's great.
Yeah. Yes. David and all the people all summer that were at Open Air Dunlop, you can see that it brings results.
Okay, so I'm just committee. I'm just looking at the application form. The applicant has confirmed the building is over 100 years old, has original brickwork. There looks like to be some stucco work on the second floor, which is a bit unique because usually you don't have this sort of mix of designs. It almost looks like it's perhaps almost a reproduction. Like it almost looks like a 1920s and a Gothic mix. But it certainly is an older building, and the applicant notes that it has original trim work, original doors, and original floors as well.
Yeah, it's a great looking house.
So I would just need a motion from the committee to list onto the register.
All right, everybody in favor of listing this house? Okay, thumbs up, you got it.
Great.
50 William.
50 William Street. I've got some good pictures for this one. I'm sorry, I'm getting my computer is just very slow, and my computer keeps freezing up on the other screen. So I'm going to try to keep everybody entertained on Google Maps here while I pull up the actual information.
Doesn't look anything like that.
Yeah, this is an older image. This is from August 2012.
Yeah.
So 50 William.
Yeah.
So I got lots of pictures to share here. So this is a picture here of the front porch. So you're looking out onto William Street. This is original staircase. We got some original stained glass windows. That looks like a transom window. Oh, there we go. We get a much better exterior shot. It's got a wonderful veranda. This is, I love these old verandas. I'm jealous I don't have one at my house. I won't show that. That doesn't show very well. It looks like there's actually a coach house in the back. This is like an original style coach house.
Did Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
did she tell you the history of that building?
There
Burton
may be.
Brothers stable, the Burton Brothers. So they had their estate up on the hill where the IOF is. And
Oh, okay.
that was the stables for their horses.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is notes here. So this is a, okay, so that's, yeah, so, not sure, sorry, it's just breaking up here.
I believe this was the coach house with the
Yes.
stables. That's
Yep.
that's really basically what it was. So it was on the entryway up to the estate, which is the IOF building now.
Yeah, so this says 5 Norris spruce on the back of the property were planted in 1904, 1905 or so, when she was a president of the IOF in the 1880s. Oh, sorry, so the person who planted these trees was actually staying at the IOF back in the 1980s. So there is the original wraparound veranda, original roof with tongue roof ceiling wood, original stained glass window above the front door, which I showed you. There's original hardwood floors that are oak and maple throughout the house. Original trim surrounding all windows and doors. Okay, original oak staircase, cast iron floor gates, pocket doors, crown molding in the front room and study. There's some original knobs as well. Carriage house at the rear of the property predates the house. It was actually built in 1876. Yes, so the carriage house was for the original Burton estate. Okay, so let me just see if I can show a few more pictures. I think I'm just number 7. This is picture 8. These are the pocket doors. And this, you can see the crown molding up top there. That's pretty decadent.
Yep.
And this is not, I probably didn't show the greatest picture, but you can see this cast iron brace. There's a couple more pictures, but of course I picked the worst one. Apologize. Yeah, so I think this would be, of course, a great addition to our register, and I would recommend that it be added. And I just need a motion from the committee if that is the case.
All right. Can I have a motion to that effect, that we add 50 William Street to the listed register? All in favor? Thank you. Oh, Kathy, did you want to say something?
I just had a quick question. I wanted to ask Thomas, with her listing the trees or as an attribute, are they protected as well?
Yes.
How does that work?
So like when we look at a development application, should one be submitted next door or anything like that, we would look at mature trees as part of that, as contributing to the heritage character of the area. If they're on the property themselves, or if they're boulevard trees, or usually I usually comment on those kinds of things.
Okay, so it's not something that, like, if you're listing your house, that you should list, like, for future people, like, should they be saying, oh, yes, I have 3 beautiful oak trees on my property, and showing pictures of those as well? Or
not necessarily. That's something I do automatically, Kathy. If they want to point it out and provide pictures, that's great, but we look at these things comprehensively. So if there's other things, such as I've seen retaining walls or fencing that's cast iron fencing that's original that I've commented on, other unique things that are clearly related to the heritage character of the property, I comment on those.
Okay.
So we are going to 90 Cumberland Street next.
Yep, 90 Cumberland.
So this is a fairly recent, this is from July 2019. Right on the corner. Oops, went the wrong way. And I'm just going to see if I got some pictures here to show the committee. 90 Cumberland. Oops, wrong size. I don't think we actually got any because all I have is a scan from our office coordinator. So on the application form, the original portion of the house is approximately 120 years old and was built to house employees of the railway at that time. They don't know about heritage value based under the act, but it's a typical sort of Victorian L-shaped house. Georgian, Gothic house with this sort of L shape and the semi-bay windows at the front. And I think there's an addition at the rear, which we can see if we look at the side here. Yeah, so we've got an addition at the rear. So that's the addition, and then the L-shaped portion is the original.
All right. Can I have a motion to list 90 Cumberland? Thank you, Kathy. All those in favor? Thank you. Nobody's opposed. We're away to the races on that one. All right. 97 Cumberland.
That house is also very beautiful inside. So it does have original floors and doors and, you know, other stuff in it. The original windows, some of the original windows are still in it.
Okay, so we're just going down the street here to 97 Cumberland.
Someone's been working very hard on this Cumberland Street. I wonder who.
Somebody has been. Somebody. So this image is from July 2019, but I do have some more recent photos here.
What a cute house.
Have you ever been there, Craig? Have you ever been?
Yeah, I've been in a few times.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to open up all 5 here, and hopefully we can get. Okay, so this is looks like this is the rear of the house here, because Street View shows us only the front. I'm not sure if this addition is original.
I would say not, and I'm. It's hard to know because inside the ceiling and the walls are cedar strip, tongue and groove. So maybe 1920s, 1930s. Yeah. Because I think underneath the yellow cladding is tinsel brick or something, but yeah.
And then we've got some interesting closet combination inside. That looks like an original staircase that's been refinished.
Yeah.
You can always tell the original when they're 30 inches or so, just that knee height. Close that, and we've got looks like original stained glass transom. Mm-hmm. And this is interesting. They're going to provide information about the original deed. So this is dated. You can see 1908. So this building is clearly over 100 years old. There's other documentation, but this is probably the best shot I could show the committee.
Yeah.
Again, this would be another one I would recommend being added to the register. And of course, we need a motion, please.
All right. A motion by Craig. Thank you. And all those in favor of adding 97 Cumberland to the register? Great, thank you. That carries. 105 Cumberland. What's happening to this street here?
There is a pattern.
Burton's already been done, so.
Actually, I'm going to tell you something. 105 had nothing to do with me.
Oh,
it did not, but I know the people.
We're going to have to get you going down some more streets.
Yeah. Well, while you're doing this, it is really interesting because when you go into these Allendale homes, it's amazing. The banisters all must have been done by the same group. They're all maple, the windows. So they were subdivisions in 1900. You know, it's really amazing.
Yeah, I would expect that at that time, there was probably a handful of people skilled enough to be able to do that work in Barrie. So you'd see the same thing being done. So again, this is shots provided by the applicant of the exterior. Again, very similar window, right?
Window.
Isn't that interesting? Same window.
Yeah, and you know what? Those windows open.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they will open.
Again, you've got some great trim work. I can't tell if that's a pocket door, but that seems like a fairly deep wall there.
Yeah, it's not a pocket door. I've been in that house too.
It looks like original stairs as well. Again, same height, same design, and again, fairly steep as per that era. And this looks to be an original door as well, just by looking at the locks and everything, the mail slot.
The bell ringer. I have one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Beautiful.
So,
Thomas, I had a
yes.
question. After we do this, how many, it seems like we've done a lot in the last 2 years. So maybe you can get an idea of how many more listings we've had in this this term that we've been in, because that's something, you know, I think we've done a really great job. So I'm just going to say.
We would probably have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 for this term. Yeah, so this has probably been one of our business seasons for adding. Just looking quickly back at last year, 2020 registrations, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and one of those is the Bradford Street properties, which is not a certainty just yet.
Awesome. Sorry. Thanks.
Well, yeah, yeah, this committee's been working hard and we've been getting great results on it. So that's really great. All right, can I have a motion to add 105 Cumberland to our register? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. All right. That's 5 for 5 tonight. All right, Thomas, development applications under review. So you have 2 of them, Innisfil Street and Burton.
That's right. So the first one being 295 Innisfil, 41 and 43 Essa Road has gone to neighborhood meeting. So there is no notice of complete application. So there's nothing for the committee to comment on at this time, just because until it's deemed complete, I don't bring them forward to the committee. And the reason I just wanted to bring it up because they have gone to neighborhood meeting. I've got phone calls about this proposal because it is sort of that triangle in Allendale. That's let me just throw it on my map here.
There's an upcoming public meeting on November 23rd for these properties, Thomas.
Okay. Yep. So we'd be going to the Heritage Committee after that point, and we'd walk through the application, and you guys would be able to ask me questions and things like that. So I'm just waiting on circulation from the file manager on that. But it's these properties in here. So it's just a substantial portion of Allendale that's has this proposed development. There is an approval here for what I believe is a 17-story building. So they're looking to continue that. I don't know if it's the same owner or not, but it's in the area. Anyway, so I just want to make the committee aware that I have my eyes on it and will be coming to the committee at some point in the future in case there was concerns.
Okay.
But the one that we do have a notice of complete application for was 181 Burton Avenue. I did provide comments on this application before it came forward. So just wanted to show sort of where the site is. So this is Burton here. This is Robinson's, and you're very close to turning into Young Street here. So I'll just go ahead and quickly jump to the proposed developments page. They are proposing a 3-story, I believe it's a 22-unit condominium building. Yes, so it's an apartment building, but it's going to be condos. There is no, sorry, just getting late. I'm just running low on juice here. There's no listed or designated cultural heritage resources adjacent to the property. So there is no requirement to provide a heritage impact assessment, but I have been working with them as well as our urban design office to provide them with feedback on sort of the design of the building. So I'll briefly put up the concept plan. Okay, there we go. So this is the, I'm just going to go backwards here. This is the elevation drawings. So down here, this is sort of this is what you see from the front, just because you can see here, this is the actual writing that says the address. So 181 Burton Avenue would be there. I don't think this is the most recent rendition, because I think when I saw this last, this had a different color. But this is what, they're looking at in terms of built form. So it's a 3-story building with a peaked roof. And we have these sort of protrusions where there is a big sort of window, and you can actually see them a little bit better down here with balconies at the front. So as you're driving sort of northbound along Yonge Street, this is sort of the view you'll get. And just for context, I'm just going to scroll up to the site plan really quickly. There we go. So just to give you a little bit of context to where it is here. So we have Milburn here, there's a set of lights here. And this way you continue out to sort of the train tracks and out of Allendale. So I know this is, I'm a little rushed here, but just wanted to show the committee what's being proposed and give the committee a chance to ask me questions and things like that. I can pull up additional mapping if you'd like as well.
Thomas, do you want a recommendation tonight, or is this for us to take away and come back next month to give you some thoughts on it?
Yeah, given just sort of the time this evening, there's no real recommendation because there is no designated or listed cultural heritage resource that may be impacted by the proposed development. So we don't have to pass a motion. It's just an opportunity for the committee to give feedback to the file manager, and then the file manager would pass those comments on to the applicant.
Okay.
So we can do this, if everybody wants to take a look at the proposed developments webpage, take a look through the reports and studies that were provided, and then you can send me comments, questions, and things like that. We can proceed that way.
I think that makes the most sense. That gives us all a bit of time to digest what's here, and then come back and give you some useful comments next month. Okay. Well, thank you, Thomas. And then the last item on our agenda is next year's meeting schedule. Tammy, I'll bet that's you.
It is. The only thing I wanted to know is the timelines and the dates for the meetings, if this time frame works for everybody for the month, and the timelines. The first Wednesday, the second Wednesday of the month at 6:30. Does that work for everybody still?
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I need.
That's all you need? All right.
That's all I need, so I can start booking the
You can book us.
calendar.
All right. Well, that was easy. And you know what? I don't know what the betting was, how long it would take us tonight, but it isn't. It's 3 minutes to 9 according to my clock. So we've done extremely well with a very long agenda. Are there any sort of burning items that need to be discussed a minute yet? No? All right. Well, then, thank you very much for your patience and your attendance. And we'll see you in a month. Thank you very, very much. And have a great evening.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
what's left?
I'll be in touch, Thomas, on signage.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Thanks, Thomas. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.